The sky turned red when the ships arrived. Looked up from the garden where she had been picking vegetables with her mother. The massive metal vessels blocked out the sun, casting shadows over the entire colony. She had never seen anything so big before. Her mother grabbed her hand tightly. "Run inside," whispered, her voice shaking. "Find your brother." But it was too late. The aliens came down in waves, moving faster than anything had ever seen. They were tall, covered in scales that shimmered green and black, with eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. Their weapons made horrible sounds that hurt her ears. People screamed, watched as her neighbors tried to run, but the aliens caught them easily. Some people fought back with whatever they could find, but it didn't help. These creatures were strong, much stronger than humans. Called out for his older brother. He came running from the house, his eyes wide with fear. He was 16 and tall for his age, but even he looked small next to these alien soldiers. "Mom, we have to go now," said, pulling both his mother and sister toward the back of their property. There was a forest there, a place they might hide. They almost made it. They were just steps away from the trees when a bright light surrounded them. Felt her body lift off the ground. She couldn't move, couldn't scream. The light held her frozen in the air. When the light faded, she was on the ground again, but everything had changed. Metal walls surrounded her. She was inside one of the ships. Around her, dozens of other humans sat or stood, all looking terrified. She saw her brother across the room, but her mother was nowhere to be seen. Pushed through the crowd and hugged her tightly. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" She shook her head. She wasn't hurt, just confused and scared. "Where's Mom?" "I don't know, they separated us." His voice broke a little. "But I'll keep you safe, I promise." The aliens walked among them, studying the humans like they were animals in a zoo. One of them, taller than the others with more decorations on his armor, stopped in front of. His yellow eyes studied her carefully. "This one is small," the alien said. His voice was rough and deep, but could understand him somehow. Maybe the aliens had technology that translated their words. "How old is this human?" "She's 8, said quickly, stepping protectively in front of his sister. "She's just a child. Let her go." The tall alien laughed. It was not a nice sound. "A child? Your species stays weak for so long, pathetic." He waved his hand and 2 soldiers grabbed, pulling him away from. "No, leave him alone." Tried to run to her brother, but another soldier held her back. "Take the older one to the labor sector," the tall alien commanded. "This small one, she will serve a different purpose." They dragged away despite his struggles. He kept calling her name until a door closed between them. Felt tears on her face, but she forced herself to stay quiet. Her mother had always told her to be brave, even when things were scary. The tall alien bent down to look at more closely. "I am Commander," he said. "You humans think you are so special, so important, but you are weak, soft. You will learn your place." Didn't answer. She just looked back at him steadily, even though her heart was beating so fast it hurt. Seemed surprised by her silence. Nothing to say, no begging, no crying. He stood up straight again. "Interesting, but it won't matter. I have something special planned for you." Over the next few hours was moved to a different part of the ship. The aliens around her talked in their rough voices, sometimes laughing, sometimes arguing. She heard them mention something called the Wolf Trial multiple times. They seemed excited about it. Finally, they brought her to a large room with many screens showing different areas. Through one screen, she could see a massive arena. Thousands of aliens filled the seats around it, all waiting for something. "Tomorrow, little human, you will face," said, appearing beside her. "He is our greatest war beast, an albino wolf from a death world, trained in blood and battle. He has killed hundreds in the arena, warriors, criminals, and creatures from across the galaxy." Looked at the screen, trying to understand. "Why?" she asked quietly. "Why?" Seemed amused by the question. "Because you humans need to understand your place. You infest our territories with your weak ways. Your kindness, your emotions, your soft hearts. The galaxy has no room for such weakness. We'll prove this to all who watch." "But I'm just a kid," said. "Exactly. If even a human child can be broken by, then everyone will see the truth about your species. You are nothing special, nothing strong, just soft creatures who will fall before real warriors." That night slept in a cold cell. She thought about her mother and brother, wondering if they were safe. She thought about her home, about the garden and the small animals her mother cared for at the wildlife center. Her mother had taught her so much about helping injured creatures, about being gentle and patient. Wasn't sure what would happen tomorrow. The aliens expected her to be scared, to cry and beg. Maybe she should be. But when she closed her eyes, she didn't see a monster. She saw an animal just like the ones her mother helped. Even the fiercest creatures could be hurt. Even the strongest could be tired. She didn't sleep much that night. But when morning came, she was ready. Not ready to fight or to run, but ready to do what her mother had taught her. To look past the fear and see what was really there. The aliens thought they knew what would happen in that arena. They thought they understood humans and their weakness, but knew something they didn't. Sometimes the softest hearts were the bravest ones. Sometimes kindness was stronger than any weapon. Tomorrow she would show them. The arena was even bigger than it looked on the screens. Stood at the entrance, feeling the heat from the lights above. The noise from thousands of alien voices filled her ears, a roaring sound like ocean waves. They were chanting something in their language, getting louder and louder. Two guards pushed her forward. The arena floor was covered in sand, rough and hot under her bare feet. The walls rose high around her, made of smooth metal that reflected the lights. There was no way to climb out, nowhere to hide. Across the arena, a massive gate began to open. The crowd's noise grew even louder. They were excited, eager to see what would happen. Felt her hands shaking, but she kept walking toward the center. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "When an animal is scared, you must be calm. Your fear will make their fear worse." The wolf that emerged from the gate was bigger than any animal had ever seen. Stood as tall as a small horse, his white fur almost glowing under the arena lights. His eyes were pale blue like ice, and they locked onto immediately. Scars covered his body, some old and faded, others fresh and red. His teeth showed as he snarled, each one as long as finger. The crowd went wild, cheering and stomping their feet. They wanted blood. Began to move toward her, slow and deliberate. Each step showed his power, his muscles rippling under his fur. He was a killer, trained and proven. Was nothing but a small girl in a dirty dress, alone in the sand. But didn't run. Running would trigger his hunting instinct. Instead, she did something that made the entire arena fall silent with confusion. She sat down. Right there in the sand, sat down cross-legged and waited. She kept her hands in her lap, making herself as small and non-threatening as possible. Her heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears, but she kept her breathing slow and steady. Stopped, confused by her behavior. His head tilted slightly, studying this strange small creature that wasn't running or fighting. Prey always ran. Enemies always fought. This made no sense to him. The wolf circled her slowly, never taking his ice blue eyes off her. Turned her head to follow his movement, but she didn't stand up. As he circled, she noticed things the crowd probably couldn't see from far away. There was fresh blood on his side, a wound that hadn't been treated. His left back leg favored the right one when he walked, a slight limp that spoke of old pain. His ribs showed through his fur, meaning he wasn't being fed enough. And his eyes, those cold blue eyes, looked tired. So very tired. "Hey there," said softly in Korean, her native language. The wolf's ears twitched at her voice. "I bet you're hurting, aren't you?" Growled, a deep sound that vibrated through the arena floor. The crowd roared with approval, thinking the kill was coming. But just kept talking, her voice gentle and low. "It's okay to be tired. It's okay to hurt. You've been so strong for so long." She switched to humming, an old lullaby her mother used to sing when was scared. The melody drifted across the sand, soft and out of place in this violent arena. The wolf moved closer, lowering his head to sniff her. His hot breath ruffled her hair. One bite could end her life in seconds. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the moment of death. Slowly raised her hand, palm open, fingers relaxed. She didn't reach toward him, just held it there, letting him see she held no weapons. "I'm not going to hurt you," she whispered. "I promise." His nose touched her palm, cold and wet. He sniffed carefully, taking in her scent. She smelled of fear, yes, but also something else. Something the wolf hadn't smelled in years. Something gentle. The arena erupted in confused noise. The aliens couldn't understand what they were seeing. This wasn't how the wolf trial was supposed to go. The humans should be dead by now, torn apart for their entertainment. Commander stood in his viewing box, his scaled hands gripping the railing. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Why doesn't the beast attack?" Below continued to study the small human. She still hadn't moved, hadn't tried to hurt him or run away. Her hand remained steady even though he could see her shaking. After a long moment, the wolf made a decision that shocked everyone watching. He lay down. Right there, just a few feet from, the legendary killer lowered his massive body to the sand and rested his head on his paws. His eyes never left her, watching and waiting to see what she would do. Felt tears of relief on her cheeks, but she kept calm. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for giving me a chance." The crowd didn't know how to react. Some aliens booed, angry at being their violent entertainment. Others just stared in shocked silence. This had never happened before in the history of the wolf trials. "Restart the trial," commanded through the arena speakers. "Force the wolf to attack." Guards appeared at the arena edges, carrying long poles with electrical ends. They jabbed at, trying to provoke him into violence. The wolf snarled and snapped at the poles, but he didn't move toward. "Stop," shouted, standing up for the first time. "You're hurting him." When the guards shocked again, something changed in. The fear disappeared, replaced by anger. Without thinking, she ran toward the wolf, placing herself between him and the guards. "Leave him alone," she yelled, spreading her arms wide. Could have attacked her then. She had her back to him, completely vulnerable. But instead, the wolf stood up and moved beside her. Not behind her, not in front of her, but beside her. Together, they faced the guards. The guards stopped, uncertain. Their orders were to make the wolf kill the human, not to kill the human themselves. This situation wasn't in their training. His voice came over the speakers again, shaking with rage. "Remove them both from the arena, now." As guards surrounded them, growled a warning, but put her hand on his side, feeling his rapid heartbeat under the fur. "It's okay," she said softly. "We'll be okay." The wolf looked at her with those ice-blue eyes, and something passed between them. An understanding. A connection that shouldn't exist between human and beast, but did anyway. They were taken from the arena together, the crowd's confused noise following them. Walked beside, her small hand resting on his shoulder. The wolf matched his pace to hers, protective and calm. In his viewing box, Commander stared at the empty arena, trying to understand what had just happened. The wolf trial had been used for decades to prove the weakness of conquered species. It had never failed before. But something had changed today. Something couldn't explain. The small human child hadn't been destroyed by. Instead, she had done something impossible. She had reached him. The cell was different from his previous one. It was larger, with strange equipment along the walls that blinked with colored lights. Cameras watched from every corner. The aliens wanted to see everything that happened between her and the wolf. Was already inside when the guards pushed through the door. He paced near the far wall, limping on that back leg she'd noticed before. When he saw her, he stopped and sat down, his ice-blue eyes following her every movement. "Well," said quietly, looking around at the cameras, "I guess we're roommates now." She walked slowly toward the center of the cell, sitting down with her back against the wall. Her body ached from fear and exhaustion. She hadn't eaten since before the attack on her colony, and her throat felt dry. Watched her for a long time. Then, carefully, he moved closer. Each step was deliberate, testing to see if she would panic or try to hurt him. When she didn't move, he came even closer until he was only an arm's length away. "Can I look at your leg?" asked, gesturing gently toward his limp. "I think you're hurt." The wolf tilted his head, not understanding her words but recognizing her tone. It was the same gentle sound she'd made in the arena. Not threatening, not cruel, just kind. Moved very slowly, reaching toward his back leg. Tensed but didn't pull away. Her small fingers carefully touched the fur, feeling for wounds or breaks. The wolf's muscles twitched under her touch, but he held still. "There," she said, finding a swollen area near his hip. "That must hurt a lot when you walk." She couldn't heal it without proper medicine, but she could be gentle. She carefully massaged around the swelling, the way her mother had taught her with injured animals. Made a low sound, not quite a growl, more like a rumble of surprise. Outside the cell, in an observation room, several aliens watched the screens. A younger scientist with lighter green scales leaned closer to his monitor. "Remarkable," he whispered. "The human is examining the wolf's injuries. It's trying to find weaknesses to exploit," another scientist said dismissively. "No," said slowly. "I don't think so. Look at the wolf's body language. He's relaxed. If he felt threatened, he would react." Commander stood behind them, his yellow eyes fixed on the screens. "Keep watching. I want to know how the human is manipulating our war beast." Back in the cell, hours passed. A slot in the wall opened and a tray of food slid through. It wasn't much, just some kind of protein bar and a cup of water. Stomach growled with hunger, but when she looked she noticed no food had been provided for him. "They didn't feed you?" she asked, the wolf's eyes fixed on her food. Broke the protein bar in half. It wasn't big to begin with, but she held out one piece toward. "Here, you need to eat too." The wolf sniffed the offered food suspiciously. In the arena, food was rare and always fought over. This made no sense. The small human was hungry too. Why would she share? "It's okay," encouraged. "Take it." Gently took the food from her hand, careful not to bite her fingers. He ate it quickly, then watched as she ate her own half just as fast. When the water came, she poured half into her cupped hand and held it out for him to lap up. The aliens watching couldn't believe it. They'd never seen anything like this before. "The human is starving itself to feed the beast," one scientist said. "Illogical," another agreed. "Humans are supposed to be self-preserving." But said nothing. He just watched, his mind working through what he was seeing. This wasn't manipulation. This was something else entirely. That night the cell grew cold. The aliens kept the temperature low on purpose, another form of stress to test the subjects. Curled up against the wall, shivering in her thin dress. She tried to stay quiet, not wanting to show weakness to the cameras. She heard movement and opened her eyes. Was standing over her, looking down with those pale blue eyes. For a moment, fear spiked through her. But then the wolf did something unexpected. He lay down beside her, close enough that his warm fur pressed against her side. His body heat immediately cut through the cold. Felt tears spring to her eyes, not from fear this time, but from gratitude. "Thank you," she whispered, carefully resting her head against his shoulder. "Thank you, friend." His ear twitched at the word friend. He didn't know what it meant, but he liked the way she said it. The next morning woke to find herself curled against the wolf's side, his tail wrapped protectively around her. She sat up carefully, not wanting to disturb him, and noticed something that made her heart sink. The wound on side, the one she'd seen in the arena, was worse. Red and swollen with signs of infection. If it wasn't treated soon, it could kill him. "This is bad," she said, examining it as closely as she dared. "Really bad." She looked around the cell for anything that might help. There was nothing except her dress and the water cup, but maybe that was enough. Her mother had once treated an infected wound on a dog using just clean water and cloth. Tore a strip from the bottom of her dress, soaking it in water. "This might hurt," she warned, "but it'll help, I promise." The wolf tensed as she cleaned the wound, but he didn't pull away or snap at her. He seemed to understand she was trying to help. Worked carefully, cleaning out dirt and old blood from the injury. It took a long time, and her hands cramped from the effort, but she didn't stop until it was as clean as she could make it. In the observation room, watched with growing concern. He pulled up medical records for on his screen and felt sick. The wolf had been fighting with this infection for weeks. The arena masters knew about it but considered it unimportant. War beasts were replaceable. But now, watching the small human child carefully tend to the wolf's wounds with nothing but water and torn cloth, felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Shame. "She's killing him," said, watching the screen. "That wound will get infected from her primitive treatment." "Commander," said quietly, "that wound is already infected. According to our records, it's been infected for 17 days. The child is actually trying to help." Turned his yellow eyes on the scientist. "Trying to help? It's a human. They help no one but themselves." "Then explain what we're watching," challenged, surprising himself with his boldness. "She's starving herself to feed him, freezing herself to keep him company. Now she's using her own clothing to treat his wounds. What does she gain from any of this?" Had no answer. He just stared at the screen, watching as finished cleaning the wound and then sat beside, stroking his fur gently. "You're going to be okay," told the wolf. "I won't let anything happen to you." Looked at her with those ice-blue eyes, and for the first time since he'd been captured from his home world years ago, he felt something other than pain and rage. He felt safe. 3 days passed in the cell. 3 days of caring for, sharing her meager food, cleaning his wounds, and talking to him about everything and nothing. The wolf stayed close to her, his pale blue eyes following her everywhere she went. The infection in his side was getting better. Slowly, but better. Moved with less pain, and the swelling had gone down. Even the aliens watching had to admit the human child's primitive care was working. But Commander was not pleased. On the 4th morning, guards arrived at the cell. They carried shock weapons and heavy chains. Through the door slot, his voice came over a speaker. "The experiment is over," he announced. "Today, we will demonstrate proper control of war beasts. The human will command to attack a prisoner. If she refuses, both will be terminated." His blood went cold. "No, I won't do that." "You will," said, "or you will die. Choose." The guards opened the cell door and pointed their weapons at, "Move, now." Had no choice. She walked out with beside her, his body tense and ready to fight. They were led through corridors filled with aliens who stopped to stare. Word had spread about the human and the wolf. Everyone wanted to see what would happen. They brought her to a smaller arena, less grand than the first but just as deadly. Aliens filled the seats, hundreds of them. In the center of the arena, chained to a post, was a human man. His heart stopped. Her brother looked up, his face bruised and dirty. When he saw her, relief and horror mixed in his eyes. "No, no, what are they doing?" "Touching," his voice echoed through the arena. "The human child will now demonstrate her control of by commanding him to kill the prisoner, or we will kill all three." "You're monsters," shouted at the viewing boxes above. "We are survivors," replied. "We are strong. Now show us this human strength you supposedly have. Command your pet to kill." Looked at then at her brother, she shook her head. "No, I won't." The crowd stirred with excitement. This was drama they hadn't expected. "Then you've chosen death," said. Guards moved toward the arena floor, weapons ready. But before anyone could act, moved. He positioned himself between and the guards, his lips pulling back to show every one of his sharp teeth. A growl rumbled from his chest, deep and threatening. "No," said, putting her hand on his side. "Don't fight them, there's too many." The wolf didn't move. He'd spent years fighting in arenas, being shocked and starved and hurt, but this small human had shown him kindness, had healed him, had shared her food when she was hungry. Now these aliens wanted to hurt her, and he would not allow it. In the observation room, watched the screens with growing agitation. He'd spent days documenting everything he'd seen between and. The data was clear. The human wasn't controlling the wolf through dominance or fear. She'd done something his people thought impossible. She'd earned the wolf's loyalty through compassion. Made a decision that would change everything. His hands moved across his console, sending encrypted files to every computer on the ship. Medical records of how the arena beasts were treated, videos of caring for, evidence of treaty violations and how they treated prisoners. And then he sent it all beyond the ship, broadcasting to the Galactic Council. Alarms immediately started blaring. Computer systems went haywire as the leaked information spread. Guards ran in confusion, trying to understand what was happening. In the chaos, something else happened. The holding cells for other arena beasts suddenly opened. All of them had freed every creature they kept for their violent entertainment. Roars and howls filled the ship. Creatures of all sizes and types burst from their cells, angry and scared. The aliens had no idea what to do. Their war beasts, trained to be weapons, were suddenly loose. In the arena, the guards turned away from to deal with the larger crisis, used the distraction to break his chains. They were old and rusty, more for show than actual restraint. He ran to his sister and pulled her into a hug. "We have to go," he said, "now while everything's crazy." But pulled back. "Wait, we need to help them." "Help who?" "The other prisoners, the other humans. We can't just leave them." Wanted to argue, but he saw the determination in his little sister's eyes. She was right. They couldn't abandon everyone else. Moved ahead of them, leading the way through corridors filled with chaos. Other war beasts saw him and followed, recognizing him as the strongest among them. Soon, found herself at the center of a growing pack of freed creatures, all following who followed her. They found the human holding cells and broke them open. Dozens of people poured out, confused but grateful. Among them were some who had been on the colony with family. "This way," shouted, remembering the route the guards had used when bringing him from the labor sector. "The docking bay is this direction." The group ran through the ship, humans and beasts together. Guards tried to stop them, and the other creatures protected the humans. It wasn't coordinated or planned. It was pure survival instinct, all of them united against a common enemy. They reached the docking bay to find it in chaos. Ships were trying to launch, aliens were running everywhere, and in the middle of it all stood Commander with a group of heavily armed guards. "Stop," he commanded, raising his weapon toward. "This ends now." But before he could fire, something massive moved between them. Stood tall, his white fur stained with blood from the fight to get here. Behind him, a dozen other war beasts formed a wall between the humans and the commander. "Your own weapons protect the weak," said, his voice filled with disbelief. "How?" "Because she was kind to us," a voice said from behind. Emerged from the shadows of the docking bay, his scales marked with blood. He'd fought his way here too, because she saw us as more than weapons, something you never did. "Traitor," raised his weapon toward. The shot never came. Alarms blared even louder and a new announcement filled the ship. "Galactic Council forces approaching. All vessels stand down." Through the docking bay windows, massive ships appeared. They were larger than the vessels, marked with the symbols of the Galactic Council. The cavalry had arrived. Lowered his weapon slowly, his face twisted with rage and defeat. The game was over. Ran too, throwing her arms around his neck. The wolf lowered his head, pressing against her gently. Around them, humans hugged each other and cried with relief. Put his hand on his sister's shoulder. "You did it," he said softly. "You saved us." But shook her head, looking at and the other beasts who had fought beside them. "We all saved each other." As Galactic Council troops boarded the ship, held onto, wondering what would happen next. Would they separate her from him? Send the beasts back to wherever they came from? The thought made her heart hurt. But that was a problem for later. For now they were safe, all of them together. The Galactic Council chamber was bigger than anything had ever seen. The ceiling stretched so high she couldn't see the top, and beings from dozens of different species filled the seats around her. Some had fur, some had scales, some looked like they were made of light itself. Sat at a table in the center, feeling very small. Lay beside her chair, his presence the only thing keeping her calm. Sat on her other side, and behind them her parents waited. They'd been found in a labor camp 2 days after the rescue, thin and tired but alive. Her mother had cried for an hour straight when they reunited. Her father had held them all close, not saying anything, just holding them. Now they watched as the council prepared to hear story. A being made of crystalline structures stood at the center podium. They were the council speaker, and their voice echoed through the chamber. "We are here to address the actions of the Empire," the speaker said. "Specifically, their treatment of conquered species and their war beast program. The evidence provided by scientists has been reviewed. Today, we will hear from the human child who was subjected to the wolf trial." All eyes turned to. She felt her hands shaking under the table, but's cold nose touched her arm, reminding her she wasn't alone. The speaker said gently, "Can you tell us what happened in the arena?" Took a deep breath and told them everything. Not just about the arena, but about meeting, seeing his pain, choosing to help him instead of fear him. She talked about the days in the cell, sharing food, cleaning his wounds, and how he'd protected her when the guards came. "I didn't try to control him," explained. I just treated him the way Mom taught me to treat any hurt animal, with kindness." Across the chamber, Commander sat in the prisoner section, his scaled face impossible to read. Other leaders sat with him, all awaiting judgment. "The human lies," one of the defenders stood to speak. "Humans are weak. They manipulate through tricks and deception. The child must have used some technology or drug to control the beast." "We've tested both the child and the wolf," a medical officer reported, standing at another podium. "No drugs, no technology, no manipulation of any kind." "Then how?" the defender demanded. "War beasts are trained to kill. They are weapons. How could a child change one?" That's when stood. He'd been sitting in the witness section, his green scales looking pale under the chamber lights. The other glared at him with hatred, but he didn't look away. "I can answer that," said. "I watched every moment between them. I documented everything. And I discovered something that my people have forgotten." He activated a holographic display that showed footage from the observation room. Everyone in the chamber watched as cared for, shared her food, cleaned his wounds. "We call them war beasts," continued. "We treat them as weapons. We train them through pain and starvation and fear. But we forget that they are living beings, was dying. Not from battle wounds, but from infection we refused to treat. From exhaustion we ignored. From the emotional trauma of years of forced violence." The hologram showed more footage. Hugging, the wolf protecting her from guards, the two of them sleeping side by side in the cold cell. "The human child saw what we refused to see," said, his voice growing stronger. "She saw a creature in pain and chose to help, not because it would benefit her, not because she expected anything in return, but because that is what humans do. They care." "Caring is weakness," finally spoke, standing from his seat. "The galaxy is harsh. Only the strong survive. Kindness gets you killed." "Then explain why the child is alive," the council speaker said. "By your logic, her kindness should have led to her death. Instead, she survived the wolf trial. She inspired a scientist from your own species to betray his empire. She led a successful escape, all through kindness. How is that weakness? Had no answer. The council debated for hours, was allowed to leave the chamber and wait in a side room with her family. Stayed with them, now wearing a special collar that translated his status as a protected being under council law. "What do you think will happen?" asked, watching his sister pet the massive wolf. "I don't know," said softly, "but I'm proud of you, so proud." Nodded. "You showed them what humanity really is. Not our weapons or our ships, but our hearts." Finally, they were called back. The verdict was ready. "The Empire is found guilty of numerous violations of Galactic Treaty," the Council speaker announced. "Treatment of prisoners, abuse of sentient creatures, and unauthorized warfare. Sanctions will be imposed immediately. All war beast programs will be dismantled and the creatures rehabilitated." The section erupted in angry voices, but council guards quickly restored order. "Furthermore," the speaker continued, "the human colony will be rebuilt under council protection. The Empire will pay reparations to all affected families." Felt her mother's hand squeeze her shoulder. "As for the war beasts," the speaker said, looking directly at, "each will be evaluated. Those who can be returned to their home worlds will be. Those who cannot," the speaker paused, "special arrangements will be made." After the session ended, a council representative approached family. "Your daughter's actions have started something important," they said. "Messages are coming from across the galaxy. Other species want to learn these human methods of treating traumatized creatures. There's talk of establishing rehabilitation centers based on what did." "But I didn't do anything special," said quietly. "I just helped a friend." "Exactly," the representative smiled. "You saw a friend where others saw a weapon. That's the difference." Later, as they prepared to leave for the transport that would take them home, worried about what would happen too. They'd bonded so completely over those days in the cell. The thought of being separated hurt almost as much as when she'd lost her parents. But then appeared, carrying official documents. "The council has made a decision about," he said. "His home world was destroyed years ago in a natural disaster. He has nowhere to return to." Felt tears building. They were going to take him anyway. "So," continued, a small smile on his face, "they've granted special permission for him to stay with your family, if you want him." "Really?" His voice came out as a squeak. "Really? The council believes he'll recover better in your care than in any facility we could provide. And besides," knelt down to look in the eye, "he chose you, just as you chose him. That bond deserves to be honored." Threw her arms around his neck, and the wolf made a sound almost like a purr. Her family gathered around them, all crying happy tears. Months later, back on the rebuilt colony, worked alongside her mother at the expanded Wildlife Rehabilitation Center. Lived with them, no longer a war beast but a companion. He played with the other animals, gentle and patient in ways that would have shocked anyone who'd seen him in the arena. Had become an advocate for war beast rehabilitation, traveling to other planets to help establish programs. Worked to rebuild their community, stronger than before. And he'd left the Empire and now worked with the Galactic Council, helping redesign how rescued war beasts were treated. He visited the colony often, bringing news of other successes, other creatures saved by the methods had demonstrated. One evening, as the sun set over the colony, sat outside with beside her. Messages played on her data pad, stories from across the galaxy of beings inspired by what happened in that arena. "Did we really change things?" she asked the wolf. His ice-blue eyes looked at her with something that could only be described as love. He rested his head on her lap, content and peaceful. Somewhere in a council prison, Commander watched the same broadcasts. He saw the rehabilitation centers, the reform treaties, the changes spreading across the galaxy, And finally, after all this time, he began to understand. Humans weren't weak. Their kindness wasn't a flaw. It was their strength. A strength that could turn enemies into friends, weapons into companions, and change an entire galaxy's way of thinking. The small human child hadn't just survived the wolf trial. She'd won it in a way no one expected. Not through violence or dominance, but through the simple, powerful act of caring. And that, realized too late, was the most powerful force in the universe.